Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this lesson is going to be about King Louis XIV of France and the absolute monarchy. So while you watch this lesson, I want you to really focus on taking notes on what I say. So if you need to pause the video and rewind as needed, go ahead, do that as many times as possible. But you're not going to see very many things to copy. So if it's on the screen, you feel free to copy it. But you're really going to want to pay attention to the examples I give and the stories I tell, and write some of those important things down. And I may pause and actually remind you that this might be something to write down. So really listen carefully. But the first thing you're going to want to write down is this definition: absolute monarchy. This is one of our essential standards for this quarter. And an absolute monarchy is where when one ruler has supreme authority and where that authority is not restricted by any written laws, legislature, or customs. In short, this means that the ruler can do what he wants when he wants, and there's nothing anybody can say about it. He's just going to do it. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start here with the idea of the divine right of kings. This is pretty much the idea that the king gets his authority from God. And down here we have a funny picture here of Donald Trump. Now, there's some people who may think that Donald Trump would really love this idea because he's a president, one of the most powerful men in the world, and I don't think Donald Trump actually thinks he gets his authority from God, but it's kind of funny just to think that some people may think that the things that he does comes because he believes God said that he could do it. But in other words, that when it comes to the divine right of kings, that God placed the king on the throne, God gave him the crown, and if people believe that their king gets their right to rule, their authority from God, then pretty much if you disagree with your king, you're disagreeing with God. You can't disagree in this kind of a system. You can't disagree with the king. What he says goes, whether you like it or not. Because but in these days, you're not going to argue with God. Um, so that takes us to France in the late 1600s and early 1700s. That's close to about 400 years ago. We're going to talk about a group of people called the Huguenots. Before we talk about the Huguenots, we need to understand that at this time in France, there was a lot of fighting. Okay, a lot of fighting between two groups of Christians, Catholics and Protestants. So I know some of you are thinking, wait, no, I'm Catholic, I'm not Christian. No, if you are a Catholic, that means that you are a Christian. Catholics are the most common type of Christian in the world. More than half of the Christians in the world are Catholics. It's just one type. So a Catholic is a Christian who sees the Pope in Rome as the leader of the church. A Protestant is just a Christian who doesn't see the Pope as their leader. They don't follow the Pope. Now, the Huguenots were a name given to Protestants or non-Catholics in France during the late 1600s and throughout the 1700s. Most French people were Catholic, and they didn't really like the Protestants. Pretty much, it was almost illegal to not be Catholic. The king said, "Nope, you need to be a Catholic. I'm the king. I say that God said that I'm the king, so that means I'm going to tell you which religion you got to be. So you got to be a Catholic." And so people really got mad at the Huguenots, and to one point where there was a infamous day called Saint Bartholomew's Day Massacre. We see in the picture up there where 3,000 Huguenots were slaughtered by Catholics. So this whole argument and fight between Catholics and Protestants about who's right, who's wrong, really it got ugly to the point where the the French government set up a new law called the Edict of Nantes. Okay, we see a kind of a picture of part of the Edict of Nantes up there on the top left. The Edict of Nantes said that, you know what, you can be whatever religion you want. We just need to stop this fighting. So the King of France, before Louis XIV, decided, here, Edict of Nantes, I'm going to allow this to happen, and you know what? Here we go. You can be whatever you want. Let's just stop fighting, because this is just not good for our country. So that's going to kind of make it a little bit more peaceful for a while. But if you want to predict, King Louis XIV it's not going to be good for the Huguenots. It'll be good for them for a while, but eventually it's going to get worse. So King Louis XIV becomes king in a very interesting way. If you take a look over the top right of the screen, you see that King Louis's father was King Louis XIII. Go figure. 13 comes before 14. Okay, we're not. I know it's a roasty, but we're not talking about gangsters here. So when Louis XIV was 9, his dad was assassinated. We see the picture up there. So at age 9, he's pretty much becomes a boy king. But let's be honest, I don't think I have to explain it. A 9-year-old cannot really be a king. Even though he is the king, he's gonna need a lot of help. So you can imagine, his mom and family are gonna come help him. But he is appointed think of of a mentor, kind of like a guide or a teacher who's gonna kind of help him do all the decisions for him until he's old enough. He's going to teach him how to be king and how to rule a country. So once he's old enough, then he can do it on his own. So the first kind of mentor he had, his name was Cardinal Richelieu. Cardinal Richelieu was a high-ranking member in the Catholic Church. And Cardinal Richelieu, while he was helping King Louis, his job was to help him rule and bring more power to the government. Now, to do so, he's going to get rid of a lot of people who think that they can probably go against the king. They figure he's just a little kid. So here's our chance to rise up against the government and not let them boss us around. But Cardinal Richelieu was not going to have that. So the first thing he did, he went after all the rich landowning nobles, and he pretty much said, you know what? You guys, you will listen to me. You will listen to the king. I know he's a boy, but I got his back. And he used the army, built up the army to make sure that, you know what, if you won't listen, we're sending the army after you. So don't think just because we have a boy king here that you guys can just do what you want and try to either take power or try to break away and form your own country. We're not going to let it happen. So he sent the army and went to some of the nobles' castles just to kind of show who's boss. And what he did, he destroyed their castles. Some of these rich nobles had their own little armies, destroyed their armies, and then they really went after the Huguenots. Okay, Cardinal Richelieu was a Catholic, and now he's got some power now. He's the top advisor now to the king. He says, well, you know what, I'm a Catholic. I don't really like the Protestants. I don't like those Huguenots. So he really made life miserable for them. So even though the Edict of Nantes said you could legally be a Huguenot, you don't have to be a Catholic, it still wasn't good. In our country's history, black people, for a lot of our history, they were slaves. And then once they got slavery was ended, life didn't really get that much better. Yeah, they were free, but really, as you would have learned in 8th grade, they weren't really that free. They were still treated very badly. Well, the same thing happened to the Huguenots. Yeah, it was legal for them to be a Protestant and don't have to be a Catholic, but they were still very much mistreated by the government. So Cardinal Richelieu eventually dies and is then replaced by another cardinal who I believe he was Louis was in about his early 20s when he had a new advisor named Cardinal Mazarin. Now, Cardinal Mazarin pretty much is going to do the same thing as as his predecessor, Cardinal Richelieu. But then eventually, just like Richelieu, Cardinal Mazarin dies. So now Louis is thinking, all right, I got this now. He says a very famous quote in French, and we see that quote up there is, "L'État c'est moi." Okay, think about that for a second. L'État c'est moi, which means I am the state, or pretty much I am the country. I am France. He was given the nickname the Sun King. Sun, not like you're the son of your father. I mean the sun, like the center of the solar system. So he pretty much said, I'm the sun here of France. I'm the sun. Like the sun is the center of the solar system, and everything revolves around me, just like the way the planets revolve around the sun. I am that for France. So he's like, you know what? I'm old enough now. I don't need this advisor. So he pretty much, when Cardinal Mazarin dies, he's like, I don't need one. I got this now. So one of the first things he does, as we see the famous Matt Hardy delete GIF up there, he gets rid of what's called, you're going to want to write this down, the Estates General. I'll say it one more time, Estates General. The Estates General pretty much was representatives from all the different social classes in France. So you had the rich people, you had the middle class, the poor people were all kind of had these representatives that would go and kind of give advice to the king. and report on what's going on with people who are like them and where they lived. In our country today, we have Congress who does that and helps us make laws and make sure the president doesn't have too much power. So that in France they call that the Estates General. Well, King Louis is like, hey, l'état c'est moi. I'm the Sun King. I am France. I got this. I don't listen to nobody. So he pretty much cancels the Estates General. No more meetings. No more giving me advice. I don't care what you got to say. Too bad. So he's like, I am the absolute ruler. What I say goes. I don't need anybody's help. If I want help, I'll ask, but you know what? I don't need it. So he builds up his army, like we see over there, just like in Star Wars, very similar to Star Wars, where the Emperor builds up the army and is just going to destroy all his enemies. He uses the army to collect taxes and to start conquering land, doing things to make himself have more and more power. As you'll find out, if you're a Star Wars fan, a lot of the things that we study this year, you'll see similarities. Star Wars movie steals a lot of ideas from world history. So just like when the Emperor consolidated all his power through the army, the writers of Star Wars pretty much got that idea, largely in part to the actions of absolute monarchs, absolute rulers like Louis XIV. Now that he's taken all his power, he's gonna show off his wealth. One of my favorite quotes was from from a rapper who first became popular way before any of you guys were born. You might even know him now as P Diddy. Well, back in the day, he called himself Puff Daddy, but that kind of name doesn't look too good these days. So he calls himself P Diddy. And P Diddy used to always rap about being rich. I got money. He's like, he's got he's got more money than he can spend. And when he used to say that, you know what, I throw my underwear away after I wear it once, and then I buy brand new ones. I'm always wearing brand new underwear. I never wear the same underwear twice. Now that is a show of wealth. I don't know anybody who could afford to buy new underwear every time. So King Louis is going to do pretty much a similar thing, but a lot more drastic. He helps with the construction of the Palace of Versailles. Versailles is still there today. We see actually these pictures are live pictures from today. And Versailles is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. It is absolutely massive. And it's just got the most beautiful decoration. If you look at the bottom picture, you see some of the chandeliers. I mean, crystal chandeliers, diamonds, gold-plated stuff. I mean, the most expensive building materials just to show off. I'm King Louis. I got money. And I want the world to know it. People will see like, whoa, this guy's got the most awesome house ever built, awesome palace. And this is just one of many palaces he had, but this was the best one. And people, rulers from around the world would hear about it and see it like, whoa, King Louis, he's pretty bad. So don't mess with this guy. And he wanted the people to know, this is my house and this is a show that I have the power. I got money. Now, to make sure that the nobles, the landowners in France knew that he was the boss, he would actually make them pretty much come work for him. In the king's court, they would have to sit there and just wait on him and sit there and just do whatever he said. And a lot of them, the nobles, were forced to meet him in the morning and help him get dressed, put on his shoes and his socks. And even at night, they would have to take his clothes off and put him to bed. Not because he couldn't do it himself, but he's saying, hey, I'm the man. You serve me. Even the nobles' wives would have to take care of some of his wives, and do that same stuff for him, just to show everybody, I'm the man, I'm the boss. Now, all of this eventually is going to sort of blow up in his face. It's as awesome as he sounds. The people in France aren't happy. He's gaining a lot of enemies, and eventually, it's all going to come to an end. Now, in order to, one of his biggest mistakes, besides spending all his money on stuff just to make him look all rich, he leads a series of very expensive wars, trying to show off to the rest of Europe that, hey, I'm the man. I want more territory. I want everyone to know that France is the most powerful country in the world, all because of me. So he's trying to gain new land. At the same time, he gains a lot of enemies. And his next door neighbors, the British and the Dutch, are like, dude, France, You're getting too powerful. We're not going to let you get too powerful. We're going to start attacking you to make sure you guys don't get too big and powerful. So all these wars, either he's going to go off and attack other people or have to defend himself. War costs a lot of money, and eventually and he's spending so much money on his palaces and showing everybody how awesome he is that France runs out of money. The people are starving, and France becomes very weak because of it. And he's going to gain more and more enemies within France. At the same time, some of the people who were suffering the most were the Huguenots. Remember, he's Louis the Catholic, and he's going to treat the Huguenots like garbage, even though they're allowed to be Protestants and don't have to be Catholic. They're still going to get hated on. So during the course of his reign, over 100,000 intelligent, educated, hard-working Huguenots leave the country. So when you have all these really smart, educated, hardworking people leaving the country, we call that a brain drain. So imagine if the smartest people in every city just left and all went somewhere else. Who's left over? The not so smart people. How does that make a city or even a country like France look? It's going to really hurt business. So all in all, the absolute monarchy, yeah, it did make one man look pretty good and kind of sort of help France, but in the end, it made them very weak and is going to take them down a road of years of instability, as we're going to find out later on this year. So if you have any questions, go ahead and make sure you contact me through Google Classroom, through email, Google Hangouts. Any of those are appropriate. If you missed anything from this lesson, go back and rewind this and watch this video as many times as you need.